What are the solutions to approach the challenges of reducing GHG emissions with a growing population?
That is actually an excellent question. It's not an obvious answer because meeting the needs of a global population that is growing, that's the conundrum. Right now, 80% of the energy mix is fossil-based. We have a population that's going to grow to 9 billion people. 70% of them are going to live in cities. That's the equivalent of adding 235 cities the size of Paris to the planet that don't exist today. So you just go, oh my goodness, how are we going to do that? So if I want to just throw some easy answers to your question, we have to decarbonize energy. We have to reduce the carbon emissions per unit, but also in absolute terms. So if you look at the hierarchy of opportunities, everyone talks about renewables. Renewables are very important and they are the future, but we can't say that that's going to happen tomorrow. You can look at something like energy efficiency, and I think that's where quite a bit of work needs to be done, where we can improve quality of life significantly, but reduce the amount of energy required to deliver it. And I think that's probably the core of my answer to your question. But then you look at the fossil system and the environmental footprint of the fossil system. There are efficiencies that could be had. There's carbon capture and storage that could be done. There's fuel shifting. We reject nuclear. Is that an appropriate solution if climate change is the existential threat that we face? Everybody talks about gas being better than coal. Well, I'm not sure that's the right way to think about it, because coal needs to decarbonize and gas needs to deliver on a number of areas. So to wrap that up into, I hope, a more synthetic version of an answer to your question, we've got to find a way to reduce what we're emitting now, reduce how much we need, and find a better way to have uptake of the carbon that's in the atmosphere.
While the use of renewables increases, does the market have enough infrastructure to support the growth?
Well, renewables is kind of a generic phrase. It captures a lot of different technologies. If we're talking purely about electricity generation, then clearly you've got a challenge of the strength of the transmission system to handle the coming on and coming off of renewables, the intermittency. There is reinforcements that's necessary. But as I said a moment ago on the energy efficiency side, if we do energy efficiency the right way and consumers become active participants in the marketplace, the price elasticity of electricity has never existed, because you and I don't know what the price is of electricity right now, and we're not going to try and find a light switch to turn off the lights. So if you can automate that with digitalization, you can get a responsiveness on the demand side that actually enables intermittent renewables to come in a larger way. So we've got to look about more than just electricity, but in electricity, there is the idea of providing balancing services, reinforcing networks, and making sure that the demand side can respond. Now, the renewables I didn't mention are in direct home heating uses, wood stoves and the like, and then in the transport sector. And those are big challenges that we face. They have to be addressed as well.
What do you think of the general trend of national governments working towards the outcome of self-sufficiency?
At risk of being rude, I think it's a misguided objective. I think the idea of self-sufficiency is somehow viewed that we're better off this way. I personally, and the UN more broadly, believes that mutually beneficial economic interdependence is a more efficient outcome. What is security of supply? That's making sure that you're able to get the energy that you require and that there are not going to be interruptions or there are not going to be any price spikes, that sort of thing. What is security of demand? That means that me as a seller, I've got a contract that's going to be respected and I'm able to transit the countries that I want. So when I define energy security, I can't think purely in terms of supply or purely in terms of demand. I have to think about an economy getting the energy that it requires in order to develop sustainably. So if I'm able to have a regionally interconnected, a globally interconnected market, I'm going to enhance efficiency across the board. And if I go back to climate change, if I go back to sustainable development, efficiency of the energy system is essential if we're going to deliver on the 2030 agenda.
How can methane emissions be monitored, measured, reported and reduced?
As I've mentioned on the energy efficiency side, I consider that to be a core activity. And at UNECE, we are developing a whole program to reduce the energy required in buildings, and that represents 40% of CO2 emissions, so that's a big near-term benefit. Well, methane is right behind it. It's a very key area where we can have a very strong near-term impact. Now, we'll get arguments that the human source of methane aren't the biggest source. We will get the argument that energy isn't the biggest source, that it's agriculture. It's always pointing the finger at someone else. There's a debate about the fact that methane is a very strong greenhouse forcing gas, that it has a bigger number than CO2. So if CO2's greenhouse forcing number is 1, then what's the right number for methane? The instantaneous number is somewhere north of 150. But because methane is considered to have a short time in the atmosphere, it's a short-lived climate pollutant, they do a mathematical discounting. And so you'll get arguments that we need to do it on a 100-year basis, or you need to do it on a 30-year basis. And so you get numbers 35, you get 80, and there are disputes about that. I would argue that as long as methane emissions are accumulating in the atmosphere, it's the instantaneous number that's relevant. And the gas industry could make a very significant contribution to the climate challenge, meeting them, if they could get the methane equation right.
Why should energy industry players attend GPEX?
Well, there are several responses to that. One, GPEX is a fantastic industry event, and I think the fact that you can gather together and for people to share their understanding, their perspectives, their knowledge, and there are a lot of strategic conversations, there's a lot of political conversations that go on, and there are a lot of deals being made, so I think that's quite important. If we're going to have natural gas displacing other fuels, then clearly the whole investment process of getting inward investment into the production, the transport, and the use of natural gas is critical. So for all of those reasons, I think it's quite important. But I will add what the French would call a bémol, or a sharp note. I find at these events that you have the gas industry talking to the gas industry about how fantastic gas is. And what I think would be useful would be to have that gas conversation, but with other interests in the room or other interests involved in that conversation. Natural gas does have a key role to play in a sustainable energy future, but if we don't recognize its place and how it fits with the others, I think we start losing a perspective. So I think this industry conference is an extraordinary opportunity for broadening the message.